Good evening and welcome to VPM's special coverage of the 2024 election. I'm Angie Miles. We will be here with you on air and online throughout the evening as we monitor the returns and talk about the important issues in today's races. I'm joined by VPM's Rich Meagher, who hosts our podcast, RVA's Got Issues, and is our resident political analyst. So Rich, thank you for being here to help us navigate this evening. The polls are closed and we're thinking about the big questions, and some of us are pretty nervous about this day we thought would never get here.
Yes.
What's on your mind this evening?
Well, there's so much to talk about, and Virginians, every year we get to vote, and this year we're voting, of course, for this very important pivotal presidential election. There is a Senate race. There is congressional districts all across the Commonwealth. And here in Central Virginia, we've got the Richmond School Board, City Council, and a pivotal mayor's race. All that plus a constitutional amendment. So never a dull day in a Virginia election.
Yeah. So we have a few districts in the state who are voting on school boards. We have a big question on the ballot in Petersburg as well.
Yes, the casino, right? So Richmond, the city of Richmond, had two bites at the apple and said no both times. And so the state has allowed Petersburg to have a chance to think about whether they want a casino. All eyes look towards the yes vote. Petersburg, of course, having difficulties with economic development, looking to grow out of their economic problems. And a lot of people there think a casino is one way to do it.
Mm-hmm. The big question, of course, this cycle is the presidential contest. And, voters are wondering. The polling has been all over the place lately, showing a really tight race, looking at swing states, looking at early voting. What prognostication can you offer us?
Right. So there's a couple options, and it's not really, we're not really sure. Polling is not as bad as it sometimes gets a reputation for, but we're just not really sure who the electorate is anymore, right? People are voting in record numbers over the last few elections. Early reports suggest that turnout is pretty good across the Commonwealth, but in some states like Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, we're hearing that turnout may be record numbers this year. So it's all over the place, and we're really not going to know what's happening until maybe later tonight, maybe later this week.
It's going to be an interesting evening. That wraps up the time for the moment, but we'll be back here on air in about an hour, and you can follow all of our election coverage on vpm.org. We'll be back on YouTube in just a moment. You're watching VPM News, and this is our special election coverage. I'm Angie Miles, and we are talking now about Virginia's Senate race. Incumbent Tim Kaine is facing a relative newcomer to politics, Hung Cao. Here is a brief overview of that race.
People say Virginia is for lovers, but we know that Virginia is for voters.
Senator Tim Kaine has been involved in Virginia politics for decades. In the 1990s, he was a member of the Richmond City Council and later served as mayor before becoming Virginia's lieutenant governor and then governor. Kaine won his Senate seat in 2012 and has served continuous terms since then. During early voting in Richmond, Senator Kaine spoke about some of his priorities and those of the Democratic Party.
Education, matters of an economy that works for all, healthcare access, fight for climate science against climate deniers, fight for reproductive freedom, fight for voting rights. And these are battles that are not yet won. We've made gains, but there is more to do.
Virginians are asking this basic question. Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? If you're saying yes, there's a couple ICE agents waiting for you outside.
Kaine's opponent, Republican Hung Cao, is a retired Navy captain whose family escaped Vietnam when he was a child, finding refuge in the United States.
America saved my life. I grabbed onto that American dream. I went to the top schools in the country, including the United States Naval Academy, that I wanted to serve in the greatest Navy in the world. I fought for a country in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. But our country's taken a dark turn.
That dark turn, according to Cal, is the influence of the far left, whom he has called socialist and communist. At his campaign rallies like this one in Chesterfield County, Cal has said that the most pressing issues facing America are directly connected to problems with illegal immigration.
We're going to defend this country. We're going to push the economy, and we're going to innovate. That's the DEI I believe in. We're going to secure this border. I'm telling you, as an immigrant to this country, don't ask for the American dream if you're not willing to obey the American laws and embrace the American culture.
Cal is critical of Kaine, saying he's failed to fix America's problems after 30 years in public office. Kaine says his record is strong, and he's focused on specific improvements in education and workforce development.
Got to keep moving forward on the economy. We have seen economic successes by pursuing what I call a make, build, grow model. We're making it here, manufacturing again. We're building it here, infrastructure again. We're growing it in our farms and forests. But we've got more work to do. With a low unemployment rate and a low birth rate, a lot of employers are having a hard time hiring as we are making, building, growing, and expanding the economy. So we need to do more skills training. We need to find more affordable childcare so people can be in the workforce. And we also need to tackle an immigration reform bill that is very focused on workforce.
Very different visions. A big talk about the past few days, though, has been Tim Kaine's appearance on Saturday Night Live, poking fun at himself and his purported forgettability as a former vice presidential contender who ran, of course, with Hillary Clinton in 2016. Another very big talk about throughout the past several weeks, months, years now has been election security and integrity of the vote. Our Rich Meagher is here with some thoughts on that, because it seems almost inexhaustible what we can say about that these days.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of concerns of people about what happens at the polls, right? And we have to understand this is a really important government function that we just haven't paid much attention to. I liken our registrars, our electoral workers and board members, and our poll workers as kind of like referees at a game. You notice them, something's probably gone wrong, and it's probably better if you're not really noticing what's happening. And so over the country here today, everything's gone fairly smoothly. We don't have tons of reports. There was this report earlier today in Richmond of a polling place in Gilpin Court where people got the wrong ballots. But in general, the election's gone pretty smoothly. So poll workers haven't seen any threats of violence, really. And certainly here in Virginia, everything has gone well there. There are also poll watchers, people who are there to keep an eye on the polls, expecting maybe something bad or sinister to happen. But I think they're going to find today, not just here in Virginia, but across the country, that in most cases, everything goes fine.
Well, let's pause a moment to elaborate on that. Poll workers versus poll watchers. Not the same thing, and most lay people have no idea what either is or what the difference is.
Right, and poll workers are trained volunteers. They usually get a little bit of stipend, a couple of bucks, but they work all day at the polls. They're retirees, they're students, they're people who take a day off from work because they want to be part of democracy, and they're the ones who hand you your ballot and take care of the folder and feed the ballot through the machine. They're trained folks, they're volunteers, they're folks who do their job, take it very seriously, and we couldn't have democracy without them. Poll watchers are people who are either self-appointed or they're brought in by a party to keep an eye on things at an election site. And again, I think that if any of them are looking for action, they're very unlikely to find it. In most places across the country, our elections run very smoothly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Republican Party in particular has been calling for more poll watchers, expressing concern about the integrity of the vote. And we're going to talk about that a lot more this evening as we cover the returns and the issues. But let's take a moment now to focus on that incident you just mentioned, Rich, that happened in the city of Richmond today. It speaks very broadly to election security, and at least one person lost their employment over it. Our Adrienne McGibbon was there and has the story.
Richmond's Registrar Keith Ballmer confirmed that Barbara Burgo, a 3rd District precinct captain, has been fired after at least 11 voters were given incorrect ballots when they showed up to vote this morning. We spoke with Burgo shortly after she was relieved of her duties at the Calhoun Community Center.
My doors were open at 6:03. Voting went well. I have a new officer who gave out the wrong ballot for 11 persons. She's new. She made a mistake. She's a human being.
Burgo said that new worker handed out a ballot with only federal candidates, meant for voters who work in Richmond but don't live in the city. Burgo said she's been working elections at this location for 17 years and defended her record for protecting the integrity of election results. State Elections Commissioner Susan Beals said the impacted voters would not be able to correct their ballots. Balmer has not confirmed that with VPM. I'm Adrienne McGibbon, VPM News.
Just goes to show that people are taking the election security issue very, very seriously. Rich Meagher here to elaborate on that and more for us this evening. I spent some time with the chief of elections in the city of Richmond this year, and he said that it is paramount to them that they count the votes. Nobody's trying to deceive anyone or do anything wrong.
Right, exactly. And we have a bunch of good registrars in the area here in Central Virginia. Particularly the Hanover County Registrar, Terry Smithson, is just a well-regarded public servant. And I've had students work with her, and it's really a very different picture than what some, at least Republicans particularly, have tried to portray. We need poll watchers because someone might do something wrong. These registrars, these poll workers, they're hiding the ballots or they're doing something. That's just not how it works. And this terrible, almost tragic circumstances we saw today in Gilpin Court, where 11 people had their local vote taken away from them, right, through no fault of their own, and they can't go back and vote again. There is nothing we can do about that, but note how quickly it was caught, right? 11 people, and it wasn't some sinister effort to throw the election to a Democrat or a Republican. It was just a mistake, the wrong ballot given. That's the kind of thing that we need to protect against more than some theft of the vote. Mm-hmm. And our registrars and our poll workers are working to make sure that doesn't happen very often.
And we've heard of isolated cases in states throughout the country, but again, small scale, no widespread cheating, but small scale and caught very early in just about every case. There have been a couple of incidents in Virginia in the last couple of years where people who have gone and attempted to vote more than once to test the system.
Yeah,
right?
And in fact, there was a court case where someone was just recently acquitted of doing that. And that's actually a felony, trying to vote twice, even as a kind of either joke or a way of testing the system. There's no need to test the system in that way. And look, if you really want to get an up-close work, we can always look at the election. We can always use more poll workers, right? Next year, plan your day off and get ready to volunteer for it. That's something you can do if you really want to see how elections work. And most people who do come away from that experience restoring their faith in democracy because they see how much work goes into making an election happen at the local level and how the people really do safeguard it.
I sense a sense of pride from people in getting it right. So
Yep.
You are watching VPM News, our special election coverage. Stay with us throughout the evening and on vpm.org for all of the returns and much more.